All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for another Countdown to Classic Dev interview. And we're back with the Classic team. It's been a while between drinks since I spoke to some members of the team, so it's great to have these guys here. Joined once again, I believe, Anna, I believe we've spoken before. Is that right? But
I
welcome
think
back.
so.
Yeah.
I think we have chatted before.
It's great to have you again. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
being here. So
nice to
you'll
have you
have to
here.
remind me, what's your official title again, Anna?
Yeah. So, my name is Ana Resendez. I am one of the lead software engineers in the World of Warcraft Classic team.
Very good. Thanks for being here. And first time speaking to him, and excited to speak to Clayton only because, I don't know, birdies have told me that Clayton is a listener of the show and a mild enjoyer of Countdown to Classic content. Clayton, can you confirm or deny?
I can't believe that after years of dodging this podcast, I have somehow wound up on it. I don't know how it happened, but somehow I'm here.
There
No,
you
I'm
go.
only kidding. I love the show. I love the episodes you put out. I love the conversations. Yes, I'm absolutely a listener. And hi everybody, I'm Clayton. I'm the associate production director on WoW Classic.
I appreciate it, mate. Thanks for being here. It's just off the cuff, a quick sort of fun spin on your title. Obviously, you're in production, Clayton. You know, I've worked in production in another lifetime. It was my first job
Mm.
out of college, so I sort of know the trials and tribulations of your job to a certain extent. But I always would have thought, and I've heard from people that used to work at Blizzard say this about, content or, not just my show, but sort of listening to users of what you produce. I would presume you'd listen in and it'd be like free market research, essentially. I mean, do you find some of the takes reasonably valuable in putting together ideas for where the game is progressing to?
You know, we're so fortunate, really, through any outlet, to have such incredibly passionate players who want to vocalize their opinions and their thoughts and their ideas. And so, particularly for the show, yeah, I think hopefully it's okay for me to say I think the show's great. I love the constructive conversations that happen from it and the feedback that we receive through it, similar to any other outlet that we utilize, be it the forums or be it online or Reddit or social or what have you. Yeah, all of it, it's incredibly valuable. It's a great way for players to be able to reach us and vocalize their thoughts for sure.
Well, I'm glad you've tuned in, mate. Let's get into the questions. And this is for both of you, just in terms of obviously we're here celebrating Mr. Pandaria Classic coming out, and it's really fun to dive back into those waters again. Clayton, I might start with you and then go on to Anna's response. I wanted to talk real quick about the Mr. Pandaria reactions now versus then, because it's an expansion that really has such phenomenal content in my mind, but we think back to when it was released all those years ago, and in my mind, unfortunately, so much of the conversation came up about the aesthetics of the game, like the whole discussion online that happened around a Asian or Chinese themed expansion, the controversial, I say in air quotes, inclusion of pandas as a playable race, Pandaren, all seems like so ridiculous now to me in 2025 to look back and ponder on. And now we can just look at the content and go, it was good. Why did we talk about that stupid stuff back then? That's just me. If I throw it to you, Clayton, and say, how does the team, or you and the team, sort of, uh, you know, contrast now versus then in re-releasing this thing and how gamers will receive it?
Yeah, it is interesting. You're right. So I wasn't on, well, obviously the classic team didn't exist, but I didn't work at Blizzard back when the original game was announced. But I certainly was online, and I was certainly playing World of Warcraft, and I remember the reaction to the announcement and the next expansion and the discussion that entailed online, and all the different opinions that came with it. And so contrasting that from where we are now, what is amazing about each of these classic expansions is an opportunity to take another look at each of them. And I can certainly say for Missa Pandaria Classic, it has been awesome. I mean, even before we get to all of the changes and what we consider to be well thought through quality of life updates and additions that we've made to Mr. Pandaria Classic, we have felt the excitement, and it's great. People have an expectation for what they're getting. They have very strong memories about the expansion, about the classes, and about the different pieces of content. And it results in really a palpable feeling that we're able to bring with us every day to work when we work on it, and energizes us. Going back to the part on taking another look or recontextualizing in some ways each of these expansions, that's true for really each of these expansions that we've been through. Even just coming out of Cataclysm Classic has been really kind of eye-opening for us. As far as what our expectations were to the player reaction to different pieces of content. Dragon Soul. I think a lot of players had far more fun in Dragon Soul than they anticipated to, but the perception of it was negatively impacted originally because of how long Dragon Soul was the current content. I mean, I think that players at the time had to sit in Dragon Soul for something like 18 months before the next raid tier released, and that can have a serious impact on perception of a piece of content. So coming into MoP Classic, what's been so great about it is not only do we have an incredibly strong foundation with incredible content just as is, and we have this wonderful player reaction to the fact that we're even going back to it, and this interest to try it out from players who never tried it even originally. But also the opportunity to look at it as a whole and bring, as I mentioned, to it some really impactful quality of life changes based on a discussion with the community about how do we make it even better. Something that continuously comes up internally as we've been developing this was, hey, if we're going to bring back one of the most beloved World of Warcraft expansions, let's make it the best version of it that it can be. And so far, I mean, my own opinion is I think we are well on our way to achieving that goal. And it's going to be a process, but it's one that we're committed to throughout the life of this expansion.
Okay, Anna, I'll throw it to you. Put a pin in that, Clay, because I'm going to come back and grill you on something you said just then for a second. Because I agree with you, but it is there's something in relation to what we've just played through that comes up. Anna, having heard everything that Clayton just said, same question, different answer. I mean, have there been discussions internally within the team about, this time they're going to realize how good the content was or anything like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from my point of view, if you look at the differences between Cataclysm and Mist of Pandaria, it's like light and day, right? Literally. Cataclysm, it was all about destruction, rebuilding, and so on. And like looking into Mist of Pandaria, it's more of like a revisit to the world. Let's look at the beauty of it and like getting like literally be zen about it and going into like it's the first time you get to be a panda and a monk, and like monk is very centric around meditation and like looking into yourself and introspection, right? And I think that this is something that I feel like it's very much needed, not just like internally in the game, but also outside. There's a lot of conversations and so on. So one of the goals is like we want to provide Mist of Pandaria Classic as a way also to escape from reality, coming into a more zen environment, like looking more into the positives. And I think that kind of the world is like looking for those kind of positive also, like let's go into experiencing this new thing. I mean, there's always war, there's always conflict. It's World of Warcraft, of course, there's gonna be that, but this is definitely a way more like lively take to it, with more focus on reconstruction and visiting very pretty and amazing places, right? And I think that Clay mentioned it, and like you also kind of touched on it, that it's players, when it first came out, it was kind of like, looking at the pandas and they were like, what? But I think that after going through the expansion and having that like experience of the gameplay, of the systems, experiencing all of it, it really grew on the players, that now when they come into it, they have their all assumptions of like, that expansion was actually really awesome, right? Like I want to go into it. And that's something that we have seen. Like we have seen like a lot of players coming back and being like, hey, I missed it the first time. I had even talking to other people just now, we've been getting like similar comments, right? Of like, when I like first time Mr. Pandaria came out, I wasn't unsure about it, like whether if I wanted to participate on it or not. And now they're like this time around, I'm really excited to get in from moment one. And I think that it's something that I'm really excited for people to go in for the first time, right, and experience it. For those that decided, hey, it's not for me, and then this like joined a little bit later, which is also an excellent opportunity because this is the only version of World of Warcraft that is currently or will be currently live very soon. That you're gonna be able to go to the Vale of Eternal Blossom as it was, right? Like talking about the beauty and the reconstruction of it. Even in the Panda remix, you were not able to go in it. If you go in War Within, if you log on in War Within, you go to Vale of Eternal Blossom, it's all destroyed already, right? Because it all stayed in that stage. And we have done a lot of work this time around to make sure that we can preserve. I think like the way that I like to think about the classic team is as curators, right, of the world of Warcraft. So we are bringing back and trying to preserve it in that way that we can revisit it in the future if that's something that we chose to. But it's also something I'm really excited. Like a lot of players just missed it all along, right, because they were not part of the original release of Mr. Pandaria. So really excited for them to go in and experience the zone as it started.
All right. Thanks so much for that, guys. Clay, I'll come back to you and pick up on a point you raised in terms of, obviously being afforded the opportunity to, I always make the Lost reference of we have to go back, being able to do things a little bit better this time around with every release of a classic expansion. Mr. Pandaria, the work is evident already to this point with everything that you guys have done via changes, class balancing, systems, so on and so forth, that's really energized and excited the player base going into Classic. The one thing I would pick you up on, though, is we just played through Cataclysm Classic, and this wouldn't be news to you guys to hear that the players were a little bit perplexed as to the handling of Cataclysm Classic to the extent of the same form of class balancing or system reworking or anything like that. It was very much so a little bit of a hands-off project. Now I am going to give you a partial credit because I am coupled with the knowledge that Season of Discovery was going on at the time, which was taking up no doubt the bulk of the team's time, resources, energy, commitment, all of that stuff. So I respect that the Classic team does have to spin multiple plates, but effectively it seemed like one baby was chosen, it was sod, Cataclysm became the red-headed stepchild, so to speak. Sorry to be there with that crude analogy, but you know what I mean. Tell me how the team felt about Classic that we're just leaving now in light of that, wanting it to be the best it could be, but maybe leaving a bit on the table.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question to ask. When we look at this Classic journey that we've been on, we start back in 2019. So much of 2019 was focused on hashtag no changes, which was intentional. We wanted to be able to show the player base that we could bring back this perfectly imperfect game as close to it was as possible with minimal changes. There were some things that were simply not possible that we had to make some tiny changes on, but that was essentially our starting point. If you track our progress from expansion to expansion, I think what you'll see is a general philosophical change as far as our willingness and our openness to make changes and start to go into the some changes to some more changes. And that's really been born out of a conversation with our players and a desire for that. Again, as players realize we're going back to these expansions and we're discussing with our contemporary player base, which is a mix of original players and new players, and discussing what they really want out of each. It has opened the doors to us to feel like it's okay to bring in quality of life changes and be a little bit more hands-on with it. When we look at Cataclysm specifically, to get to your question, I think there's two things that I think about. The first is that we actually did make a lot of changes in Cataclysm that have now persisted into Mr. Pandaria, like the rolling valor caps. or changing up the way that shaman tier sets worked during the Firelands phase of content to make that the optimal way to play as it was back in the day, rather than just sticking with the final patch balance. And not making any changes whatsoever there. Certainly, I would say compared between Cataclysm and our approach to Mists of Pandaria Classic, we have elevated that level of changes to what I think is a great degree, again, pinpointing the major points where we think that we can make an impact with Mists of Pandaria Classic. But really, it has generally tracked as far as our trajectory and our desire to make changes. I would also say for Mists in particular, we have the great fortune of being able to talk with the original developers, the ones that are still here at Blizzard, and are able to view these different expansions holistically. And as we do this research to understand exactly the types of changes that were made and when we look at Mists of Pandaria, the class has changed substantially over the life of the expansion. And unfortunately, in 5.4.8, we're left in a state where some of the classes, we wouldn't just want to use that final iteration of them, particularly because, as we found out, the original team was so close to shipping the first Warlords of Draenor patch at that point that they actually left some of the classes in almost like an unfinished state because they knew that Warlords of Draenor was coming out imminently after that, and they were going to fix those classes or make the final adjustments there. With Mists of Pandaria Classic, it gave us the ability to be able to look at that and actually bring in or bring forward some of the changes from Warlords of Draenor right from the start. On the flip side, though, we also don't want to find ourselves in a position where we are making changes to classes on like a week-on-week basis. Suddenly, it feels like we've gone like too far outside of major outliers, which is why I hope we've indicated to the community that that we have a plan for how these classes will progress over the life of Mists of Pandaria, and we're not going to wind up in a situation where a class that is perceived as being extraordinarily powerful by the end of the expansion. Yes, we are giving them buffs at the very beginning, but that's because they were underpowered at the beginning, and we do expect to monitor and change that class over the life of the expansion for each phase. I think a lot of it comes down to being more communicative with the player base. And in some ways, and I'll own this, I don't think that we necessarily communicated as frequently as we should have about changes that we were bringing to Cataclysm. And I hope the player base has noticed, particularly in the lead up to Mists of Pandaria Classic, we have made a concerted effort to try to be more vocal about everything we're doing, why we're doing it, and continue that discussion with the player base.
All right, Anna, we'll throw it to you. I'm smiling here the whole time, Clayton, because I'm laughing inside going, and please take this the right way, going, you're so lucky we only have half an hour. It's what you're playing 5D chess here because you've worked out the strat against me, which is very engaged long responses that wipe a bunch of my pushier questions off the table. So well done, sir. Anna,
I hope. I mean, I love talking about this, and I think a lot of it comes from truly how excited we are about the direction that we're going. That I wish we had more time.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Let me ask you something, hopefully more in relation to your day-to-day role with the team, which is, more on the technical or the software side of things. A field I know nothing about, and I'm going to try my best not to sound like a fool here. But when it comes to MoP Classic, we talk about some of the not necessarily gripes, but requests or, needs of the community that they bring up on a regular basis. Things like, oh, why don't we have solo queue? Why isn't cross-region play across friends lists more easily implemented? Why don't we have, they should think about doing something like a Mythic Plus system in MoP Classic, and all these technical things on the back end that would take a fair bit of work to transplant over to MoP Classic. So not asking whether or not those things are coming, which, obviously a lot of them aren't, but I'm more going to ask, tell me maybe your biggest, what's the word, the most family-friendly word I can use here? What's your main gripe or complaint that people don't understand about the work in terms of how easy or hard it is to implement software changes to the Classic franchise, if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah. So I'm getting that since you're not very technical savvy, I can just say whatever and you're going to be like, sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Go for it.
So no, the reality of things is that first of all, a lot of the examples that you posted, something that I want to make clear is that whenever there's like a new change that is very technically heavy, we want to make sure that we work together with all of our team members, like the different disciplines. Like when it comes to a lot of the decisions, like, hey, do we want to be bringing solo queue, or do we want to make sure of like what sort of like cross realm grouping we want to be enabling in World of Warcraft Classic? It's a conversation that we really have with design and also production, right? Like it depends on when how our timelines are looking, what are the content that we're having. But above all, we want to make sure that this is something that we want in the Mr. like in this case, Mist of Pandaria ecosystem, and something that makes sense, right? We definitely take a look at which one we're targeting. Like, for example, Mist of Pandaria, we might have like a different sense, right? Like we have the Dungeon Finder, for example, in Mist of Pandaria, which is a different decision that we took for the Era Service and Fresh Anniversary realms, right? So that's foremost something that we always take into consideration. But reality of things, as you mentioned, there's sometimes where design is like, you know what, I mean, I would be interested on these, but then on the technical side of things, we're like, you know what, that takes a long part of it, or like a long effort, and then that's when we partner with Clay, right? And make sure that like, and Clay and the other producers, to make sure that we can fit it and kind of look at our priorities and see what makes sense. But foremost, we do talk to the designers to make sure that this is something that we want. One of the things that when you touch about specifically on the other part of the question, that is, um, something that you're like, oh, I wish that people would understand, because I'm not going to tell you that all of these are for free, right? But something that we learn from, just like the designers, and what Clay alluded to, of like, we talked to the designers that were originally in the game and worked originally on it, and like kind of go through their own assessments. We also talked to the engineers that were originally here on the daily basis. And kind of like when they first implemented World of Warcraft, they never did it with the idea that we were going to revisit again. So there's been a lot of systems, data, and so on that has just been completely overridden, that makes it really hard to get back to it. For example, the Veil of Eternal Blossom, it took like a big effort for us to be able to restore it, right? But now that we have the learnings from the past, we know that we want to preserve it. So we really invested on the technology so that we can go through the zones in a more dynamic way, instead of like, hey, this is the map. Now let me replace it with this other one, stomped, and then all the data is gone. So I think that another thing that we're also thriving on is that we work really closely with our War Within Fox, right, too, and we want to make sure that like we do as much set the technology in a shared space so that we can benefit from the technology there and also on our side. But yeah, I guess TLDR, I do want to say though that I've seen some comments online too of sometimes people saying like, oh yeah, the Classic team just copy paste the original code and then that's it, it's done, right? Like, why don't you just copy paste it? But I want to just ensure that there's like way more to it than just copy pasting some code. It does require a lot of like finesse and making sure that the data fits in and all the systems work correctly. And we're trying to make sure that all the systems from the different like the different versions of classics are still intact, so we can revisit those expansions too.
Okay. I can't believe we're already at the 5 minutes to go mark already, but I'll try and do my best with the last two questions. Clayton, fire up, because here we go. I'll just say on that point, Anna, if you guys have given any consideration to solo queue, my God, would it be a godsend for this game, in my opinion. I'm sort of, yeah, if it can be done, like, please consider it. But anyway, Clayton, mates, if I can ask for a little bit of a peek behind the curtains, as much as you can say, obviously you don't have to tell me specifics because you can't, but like, I'd lightly brought this up with Josh about a year ago when Sod was, kicking ass and taking names, about how well it was received with, the higher ups or management at Blizzard. And obviously Sod's success is now directly driving what's happening next for you guys, that, the next big thing that's unnamed and unannounced, but also with Mr. Pandaria Classic. There's no doubt that Sod was a hit, and it's, enabled you guys to hire more people and fire up and go get it, which is great. How would you say management, I could say management, you know what I mean? How does management feel about the Classic franchise right now? Can you tell any stories or describe any moments about, of recent times, sort of reporting back about the positivity or the figures behind, you would know this as a producer, the figures behind Classic that is resulted in some fun conversations with the higher ups?
Yeah, sure. I think I can give a little bit of a broad perspective on that. We continue to be impressed by just how well the players have shown up for everything that we've done. And I really mean that, including, let's say, our anniversary realms. We knew we wanted to bring Classic back, that Classic 2019 experience back, and we see the calls for Classic Fresh leading up to that so much. But even with that has far exceeded our expectations. And certainly, as you just mentioned, the same was true for Season of Discovery. The response to that blew us away. And even now, heading into Mists of Pandaria Classic, the engagement that we're seeing with it and people returning or intending that they're going to play Mists of Pandaria Classic has exceeded our expectations, which is amazing. And to your point, that has allowed us to grow a little bit, which is awesome. I will say that certainly we have very large ambitions about the directions we want to go and all the things we want to accomplish. We've already talked about the fact that we're returning to Burning Crusade in our anniversary realms for the first time since it was launched in 2021, which is super exciting, and we're excited for that. But it has also allowed us to be able to organize the team in a really productive, healthy way, to be able to fulfill our ambitions. And I can confidently say that right now, at the moment, the bulk of our time and our attention is being spent on making sure we deliver the best version of Mists of Pandaria Classic that we can. And it's coming right up. Hopefully that answers your question. Are there any other details in there that you'd like me to dive into?
We're not going to have the time for it. That's okay, mate. Thank you.
Okay.
Look, I'm going to do the hardest question last. I was sitting here the whole time wondering whether I should ask this or not, and the PR guys can jump in and get upset if they don't like this question. But Clay, real quick, because we've only got like 2 minutes left. Mate, a random conversation came up in the Discord the other day about the monetization of the Classic franchise. And I've said for years now, it's been shocking to me how little you guys have leaned on monetization. Obviously, the boost has been a huge thing for you guys. But outside of that, the Classic store hasn't been riddled with mounts, pets, all that stuff that I would have thought would eventually come to us given the success of the store with retail. What is the conversation? So, and people will get upset and go like, oh, Josh, don't give them ideas. It's like, if you think I'm giving them ideas about this, you're a fool. But I just want to know, Clayton, what's the conversation about the strategy with monetization for WoW Classic moving forward? Is that something that is eventually coming? I mean, I don't necessarily want it. I don't care. But are you guys like okay just sitting on your hands with the store a little bit with this one?
When you say this one, do you mean specifically
the Classic franchise, Sod, MoP, Kata, all that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of it is very well considered, and anything that we choose to pursue, we do so from the perspective of providing value to players, providing something to players that we think they're going to want. That's true of anything that gets put on a store, whether it be a service or a mount or a cosmetic or something like that, all the way up to all the expansions. I mean, the only reason we have continued on this amazing Classic journey is because players have told us that it's what they want. As we move into Mists of Pandaria Classic, that has been the reason why we do all of this.
So are you saying you don't think there's a want or a desire for, store-bought cosmetics or whatever amongst the Classic player base?
I think that everything that we do is extremely well considered, and we have a lot of discussions about it internally. I don't think we would ever do something that we don't think no one's going to want. I don't think that'd be a good use of our time or our resources, certainly.
All right, you've done it. He's too good for me. Tobias, John, he's too good. He swatted everything away with too much professionalism. I'm here and I've just met my match. What do I do? Guys, thank you so much. Anna, you were brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
And
That was great.
Clayton, you're a formidable opponent. I'm bamboozled. I'm absolutely bamboozled. Thanks, mate.
No,
I
this
didn't
was
realize
awesome.
that it was a match. I thought we were just talking about Mr. Pandaria, just having fun, right, Clay?
No, this was great. Thank you for all the awesome questions. It was this was a fun conversation. We got to do it again sometime.
It's a 2-hour conversation wrapped up in half an hour. It's definitely a bit odd like that, but it's fun nonetheless. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.